Welcome to the Force Dyad Podcast, a Star Wars-centric podcast which aims to connect us fans to our fandom. Each episode, we discuss recent shows, movies, and what's new in books, comics, and gaming. We share our favorite theories and touch on our collectible hobbies, all in an effort to connect the galaxy far, far away to our own. And welcome to episode 3 of the Force Dyad Podcast. You've got Jedi John here with
Obi-Sean. Hello there.
Now we're here to break down episodes 2 and 3 of The Bad Batch on Disney+. Really excited to get into these two episodes. Honestly, we got some good details in each one. And then, you know, it's a kids' TV show, so you got those filler episodes to kind of...
Some character building.
Yeah, some character building and move the story along, but also you get to know your characters a little better for everyone to kind of gain those attachments.
Tease a couple things for future episodes as well.
Yeah, and then it gives us the opportunity to dig into them really hardcore because, well, we're nerds.
It's what we do.
And first we're going to plug some socials.
Yes.
And then we'll jump right in.
Yep. So on the socials, you can find us on Twitter at Force Dyad Pod. And then you can find us on Instagram and Facebook by searching the Force Dyad Podcast. So, and then as far as where you can find the podcast currently, we're on Anchor and Spotify and Pocket Cast currently with Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, etc.
On the way. Really excited stuff there. Like, it's amazing how they just link up everything and they get us out there. So really appreciate that. Mm-hmm. So we'll just roll right into episode 2. So Cut and Run was the name of the episode, which gave us our secret person that we were going to go find on a planet.
A reintroduction to a face we've seen a long time ago.
Yeah. So we run into Cut and his entire family again on planet
Seleucami.
I didn't want to mispronounce it, so I'm glad you had that down. And yeah, it's obvious from the get-go that the clone Force 99 has been there before, and Cut knows them very well for whatever reason, which is cool. It's cool. He immediately asks where Crosshair is, and they get the rundown that Rex has already been there, and they told him about some inhibitor, the chips, microchips in their head.
Yeah, Rex explained to Cut, what was kind of going on with the clones attacking the Jedi, and Rex and Cut have a history from back in the Clone Wars. TV series. Yeah,
Rex got separated from his platoon and
during the Battle of Seleucami.
Yeah, and Cut took him in while he was injured, and then ended up helping him defend his homestead from droids.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, pretty simple. So we know Rex was there the day before Clone Force 99 got there, and obviously during this time everything is moving pretty quickly with Order 66 just happening. Rex was not on that planet, and when he had crashed with Ahsoka, so he got there somehow.
Right.
And they asked where he was going. He didn't know. So Rex is still in the wind there.
We will meet him later.
I'm thinking we will. According to the trailers, we do.
We definitely meet him later. Just a matter of where.
Yeah, right. Whether it be now or Rebels,
right.
Whichever one.
We're gonna find him.
We're gonna find him later. But it's really cool that they had already known about Cut, and also were keeping that a secret. And it's just kind of interesting. And then Omega jumped right in when Cut mentioned the microchip and was like, "Oh, the inhibitor chips? Yeah, that's a thing." And everyone is very confused except for
Omega and Tech, and Hunter's like, what? You didn't tell us it was a chip, and he's like, how did you think it worked? It's lost on Tech that not everybody possesses his level of intellect.
Yeah. I told you they were programmed, dude. What do you think I meant?
Right.
Really, really good scene though, and we learn immediately that Omega has some extra knowledge that most of the clones do not, even though she is a clone herself. In the special project, which is, I guess, Clone Force 99 special project. But yeah, so Cut and his family have decided that with the Empire moving in, they need to get off planet as soon as possible.
Quickly.
And one of the things now that they have to get off planet is a chain code. And unfortunately for them, if he tries to go and get a chain code, he will be found out as a deserter and most likely executed, I would guess, right? Or
More than likely, or at least imprisoned.
Yeah.
I mean, and you figured the chain code is, I guess, akin to a social security number or something like that, except they were applying them to vehicles as well. So it's like
Right.
the VIN number or a social security number. So
Yeah, the Empire's definitely trying to like really wrap their hands around what's going on for sure. We also see Omega start to react with a new planet that she's never been to. She's only seen water on Camino, so she found dirt. That was interesting. She just was in amazement, and Tech was like, "That's dirt."
well, and she you know, she gets to play with Cut's his adopted kids.
Yeah.
And you kind of start to see her, you see her as a child, and I think that's something we'll talk a bit about when we do the breakdown after the recap. Just some of the overarching or the groundwork they're laying from a character standpoint with her.
Yep. So Tech comes up with a plan that says, "Hey, they're impounding ships right now to put chain codes on them, so let's get our ship impounded. We'll just act like it's been deserted, and we'll stow away on it until we get there." And unfortunately for him, it's a great plan, except Omega is just chilling up front in the captain's chair, and so they've got a little extra person. So it's Echo, Tech, and Omega getting impounded, and that puts everything kind of in motion for the rest of the episode. The family loads up with Wrecker and Hunter, and starts to head towards the city. Of course, we find a little bit of trouble on the landing pad, as always. They get clamped down, which I guess they didn't think was going to happen, or maybe it did, and they were like, "This should be simple." But Echo has to go sneak into one of the guard posts to create chain codes for. Well, he was told to get them for 5 people, even though we all thought they were only doing it for 4. But he grabbed an extra one because Hunter was trying to send Omega off with Cut.
Yeah, he was trying to give her what he presumed to be the life that she needed.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, she didn't like that idea very much. So, but it worked out because during the battle, she obviously came back and helped. And it was interesting to watch Clone Force 99 kind of react to, okay, well, we can handle all these clones, but now I have to worry about this kid. That's not in the way, but also it's an extra thing.
Right, exactly. So it's not a soldier. We're not used to to dealing with somebody like this.
Right, and because at that point they had thought that she was gone with Cut and his family. So
yeah, they're getting ready to blast off, and all of a sudden she's like, "Hey, wait for me!" and jumps over the boxes on the cargo that's there on the landing pad, and almost gets her. Well, she does get herself caught, tagged up by one of the clone troopers, and Hunter has to go and basically rescue her. It's a pretty cool shootout scene, but Echo's unable to get the
clamp off.
The clamp off, and so Wrecker, being Wrecker, just goes and just
rips it
right off the bottom of the ship, and yeah, they're able to take off and
they're able to escape the planet. Cut and his family get off the planet with forged chain codes for themselves,
despite almost being discovered.
Oh yeah, they did have that scene on the ship, like at the boarding.
They're getting ready to board, and the clone officer overseeing it goes, "Hey, you look familiar." And then, just as he's presumably about to make the connection, they're like, "Hey, we've got a problem over the landing pad." So fortunately, they're spared there, and they get to board. And we don't know where they go. I don't think it's known where they take off to. So
they didn't say where they were going. They just, the entire time, we just have to get off planet.
Correct.
So good for them. Successful mission, so to speak. No casualties. That's a good one. And that kind of closes out episode 2.
What out of 10, what would you give the episode?
It's a solid 7. I mean, nothing crazy happened during it. It was really just one of those move some story details along, move some character development. We got to see a few things I know we're going to go into. But yeah, I'd give it a 7. That's solid. I mean, solid episode, nothing special.
Yeah, I mean, comparing it against episode one is, I mean, you can't. It compared to episode one, everyone thought it was a letdown,
Yeah.
or
Which,
slow, or you know,
well, I mean, you're talking about 3 days after episode one too. We didn't even have a week to process episode one.
that's
So,
true.
and it was 70 minutes. So we're talking about half the time for the episode, and well, less than half the action.
Right,
That's for
exactly.
sure.
Yeah, I would agree. I'd probably give it a slightly higher, maybe like 7.5 to, I don't know, 7.5 to 8. Just because I always appreciate, I appreciate the character building and the story sort of development, and what they're trying. I think what they're trying to do with not just Omega's character, but the clone, the Bad Batch in general. And so yeah, I yeah, 7.8 maybe to 8, I guess, for me.
Yeah, IMDb and their critics on there have it at a 7.6. So yeah, right in the middle. Yeah, not a bad episode. Just nothing crazy action.
Nothing to write home about.
Yeah, nothing. Yeah, not forgettable because we did learn a few good details that we're going to go into. But yeah, really just kind of cut and dry. We have to get off this planet.
Cut and run.
Cut and run. That's it.
The name, the name of the episode is very fitting for the feeling. So as far as going into a breakdown now, trying to highlight some of the, I guess, bigger pieces.
I think one of the first things we get in the episode is we get to see Omega being a kid and experiencing a new place, similar to anybody else that's never been on a planet with anything but water, or like we saw Rey in A Force Awakens when she went to a planet that wasn't just sand.
When she went to Takodana and she's like, I didn't know there was that much green.
Right. So, I mean, you get to see that wonderment, and as a child, not an adult, even though Rey was definitely still like blown away by it. You see Omega like bend over, get down. What is this? Like, she's curious about what it is. She picks it up, she, like, lets it fall out of her hand, trying to kind of just figure it out. And it really was like that moment where you're looking at her as really just a kid, definitely not a soldier, definitely not a normal clone. Like, she's a child.
Exactly. And even when she steps out of the ship for the first time and she sees sun, like, they don't even have sun on Camino. It just rains all the time. It's like Seattle, apparently. And so it's fun. And I actually tweeted about it, about how innocent the dirt scene was. It's dirt, right? But you get to see, like you said, just her be a kid and see her learning and experiencing new things that she's never seen before. And it's almost like we'll probably see that to some extent in each episode, because everywhere they go will be something new for her. And I think to branch off of that, you have the Bad Batch's interactions with her. And there's a scene about halfway through where they're playing ball, her and Cut's two kids, and the ball goes over the fence, and they're like, okay, don't worry about it, we'll go back and get it later. And her not knowing any better, her wanting to help, she ends up putting herself in danger by going and getting the ball, and she has to be rescued from, it's kind of like a saber cat, I guess.
Yeah, I'm not sure what that was exactly, but yeah.
And so, she's rescued, and then Hunter just lays into her, and Cut has to stop him and be like, she's a kid. And as a new parent, it's this whole episode, and maybe that's why I enjoyed it so much, is I related a lot to what Cut's wife said about how kids, their job is effectively to get in trouble. They will find trouble. And as parents, it's our job to protect them. And, it instantly made me think of my son and how that's right. Like, he doesn't know any better. He's exploring, and everything and it poses a potential danger to him. And then how I react to him doing these things, to him exploring, it's like Hunter reacting in a way that he's used to, like, oh, you should know better, and failing to realize that she's just a kid, and
She has no way to know better.
she has no clue, right? She's learning, and he's learning, just as any new parent does.
Yeah, and that's one of those first moments where I think he realized, like, I knew we had a kid with us. I didn't know what that meant until right now, and there's a problem here, which is why we get later in the episode him trying to say, you just don't belong with us. Like, that's the problem, is we don't know how to take care of you.
Exactly. And just understanding that he's making a decision that he thinks is best for her without even, taking into account her thoughts on it, right? And granted, she's a kid, but she came with them because she wants to be with them, and that's the last scene is her and Hunter speaking, and she says, I have a lot to learn, and he goes, so do I. And so that's going to be something, again, I think that is developed, throughout the season is, and he says, if this is where you want to be, this is where you're going to stay. And so I don't think we have to worry about them trying to ship Omega off anymore, but just that growth, that character growth, while it was a slow episode, I, again, personally really identified with that sort of underlying message.
No, absolutely. I mean, and it was big. I mean, it's big for them to all grow. I know we've seen all the memes out recently with, it's like the 3 Men and a Baby memes, but it's the 4 Bad Batch members with Omega in
Exactly.
the middle. And it's funny, and you expect that, and you've got the goofball in Wrecker, and you've got like the really smart one that's just in tech, and then Echo's just kind of more, he's there, but and then you've got Hunter that's really trying to play dad, but has no clue what he's doing. So
just like most new parents,
right? And yeah, it's just it definitely a cool scene, and there's a couple of those in the episode, even at the end when all that foreshadowing came true really quick this episode, where she said kids will find a way to get into trouble, and sure enough, I thought you were going with them, and now you're in the middle of a firefight, and I have to take care of you.
Got to rescue you.
So yeah, really cool stuff. Yeah, other than that, I think the biggest detail we got the rest of the episode was just the fact that Rex had been there the day before, which means he's we knew he was on the move anyway. I didn't know if he was going to re-enlist himself somewhere along the line and then break off later, but it seems like he has already just said, I'm not going back.
Yeah, he's on his own. I don't know that he would be able to reintroduce himself because, well, I guess nobody else on the ship made it off. So there's really nobody to report him as being traitorous. Yeah, my other question, and there may not be a whole lot to expand upon here, is with Cut being a clone, why, like, what is preventing him from, carrying out Order 66?
Well, I'm gonna play it. So I've got like 3 thoughts that I've got for this. So the first one is there aren't any Jedi around, so Order 66 was to kill the Jedi.
Right.
So unless it's expanded into and help me create a new empire, but I don't think that's the case. I think it was to kill the Jedi.
Right.
So Cut just didn't have anybody to go after, so he has no effect. That was one of my thoughts. Did you have a thought, or because I can keep going because I've got 2 more thoughts.
Well, you keep going, and then I'll see if something that's if what's in my head meshes with what you're thinking.
All right. So second, the inhibitor chip has just malfunctioned. It completely is not there, doesn't work, which would make sense because he was able to.
It allowed him to desert.
It allowed him to desert in the first place. And then the third piece kind of goes. My third thought kind of goes with that is that he was also a enhanced clone that they had put into a different troop, and that's why his inhibitor chip wasn't working, because most of the Bad Batch inhibitor chips are not effective. So that was kind of my thought on that, is like it's got to be one of those things. But I mean, he never really showed any enhanced skills,
right?
But
other
he
than
definitely
being a family man
and being free thinking, which is
it's unique.
It's unique for clones. So yeah, I don't know though.
That's interesting because it made me think about what he said as far as him and Rex talking, and how Rex was explaining the chip thing, and how I guess he wasn't surprised. Well, he didn't come across as surprised, or if he was, I guess he didn't really portray that to the Bad Batch in discussing it. At least not the way that Hunter did, and so, like you're saying, maybe he it just doesn't exist in him. Maybe, like you said, maybe they didn't put it in him, and maybe that was a test to see if they could remain loyal under normal circumstances, to without it. And so maybe he was, because he doesn't look particularly old, but he also doesn't look young either. So maybe he was an earlier clone, like one of the earlier ones, and they tried that out. We're like, hey, we'll experiment, like you said, maybe not put that chip in him, and then kind of see what happens. And well, he ended up deserting. He ended up going, yeah, I'm not going to do this, and peacing out. And I know they go into that in a lot more detail in that arc, and I think it was season 2 of the Clone Wars, but we won't discuss that now. But I wonder if they will discuss that at all in future episodes. Why certain people are reacting a certain way, because that might help explain a bit.
Yep. Okay.
I think that pretty much does it for episode 2.
I was gonna say, anything else? I can't think of anything else notable that I was when I was watching it. I'm like, yep, that's important.
Yeah, that'll be important.
Yep.
No, I don't think so.
Okay,
let's move to episode 3.
You want to take the lead on
the
that?
Replacements.
The replacements.
So so we find ourselves on board the ship. Again, still has no name. Blasting.
Waiting on that. It's got to have something.
It's got to have something at some point, and maybe they're, they're waiting to they're waiting to reveal it because they want to sell toys for it, but I don't want to spoil it. But anyways, they're flying through hyperspace. Tech and Echo are arguing about, if Tech had taken the time to fix certain onboard components, they wouldn't have all these alarm bells going off. And meanwhile, Tech is tinkering with this like headset thing, which is meant to, I guess, identify or find the inhibitor chips.
Yeah, he said it was a scanner.
Yeah,
for the inhibitor chips, and so they're definitely going to look for theirs and see if they can remove them, because they don't want to be controlled. And I think that's also going towards something else down the line. But we'll just continue with the recap. So.
Right. So blasting through hyperspace, they're bickering, and then all of a sudden they drop out of hyperspace, out of nowhere. And end up crash landing.
Yeah, failed. Hyperdrive failed.
Right. So crash landing on just a random moon. We're not given a name of the moon. And during the crash, Wrecker is seen to just smoke his head on the lap bar, the overhead restraints, and all he does is spend the rest of the episode griping about it. Which actually allows him to do something cool at the end. But anyways, they end up crash landing on this moon. And after doing diagnostic, they determine, hey, this capacitor is bad. We got to replace the capacitor. Fortunately, they have one on the ship. Omega tries to help find it, only to come across Crosshair's gear. They all kind of stand around looking at it awkwardly, I guess reminiscing. And Omega makes a comment about... effectively, he's doing what he's designed to do, and which again kind of piques everyone's interest. And then they just leave it there. So, anyways, they need to replace the capacitor. Omega notices that there's, or sorry, not Omega. It was Echo, and Echo and Tech went outside. Noticed that there's a critter running around, which they call an Ordo moon dragon. And so. They input, or they replace the capacitor, only have the dragon steal it, and then they have to go fetch it
because they're attracted to, I guess they're
like
to
power,
energy and
like power sources.
Yep.
So they then cut away. We go back to Camino, and we see Governor Tarkin now.
Yeah, now governor.
Now governor.
Congratulations on the
promotion. Again, with Nala Se in the med bay with Crosshair, and we meet the Imperial officer that we see in the hologram in episode 2 as Rampart, and he's effectively in charge of coming up with a conscripted squad of troopers as part of this phase out clones and bring in the conscripted or the enlisted soldiers. And so they're continuing to experiment with Crosshair's inhibitor chip, trying to slowly amplify it even more. And they decide to put the new elite squad to the test. Tarkin sends 4 elite troopers along with Crosshair back to Onderon.
And we did find out that they used to be Republic fighters.
That is true.
And they were not happy with the Republic.
That is true.
So
the one who's got a big mouth, I don't think they ever actually gave him a name. I think he was ES01 in the credits. But he basically says that the Empire has done more for them than the Republic ever did. Pay them, feed them, give them shelter, etc. Basic necessities, human necessities. So they're sent to Onderon to basically finish the job that the Bad Batch had failed to do previously.
Find Saw Gerrera and
take him out. And so they come upon the same encampment. It appears that they're getting ready to pack up and leave, and the elite squad basically ambush them.
And they take care of them pretty quick.
They do. They take care of all the main soldiers or the main fighting force, and there are still civilians there. And it's interesting because just like Hunter did with Crosshair, the elite squad trooper speaks up because Crosshair is there to finish the mission, and the mission was to, find and terminate Saw. Saw wasn't there, so he's going to finish the mission anyways, which means terminating
all the insurgents,
everybody. And the elite squad trooper speaks up and exclaims that, I'm not here to be an executioner. I'm here to be a soldier. And Crosshair,
immediately just says, so you're not going to
You're not going to find it. Yeah, exactly. You're not going to finish the mission. You're not going to follow orders. And he's like, no. And he turns around and, Crosshair has swift punishment for a dissenting trooper, excuse me. And again, he says, good soldiers follow orders. And so he tells the remaining troopers to finish the job.
Yep.
And we get, short of Anakin, actually, it's probably on par with Anakin offing the younglings.
Yeah, because it's basically just a family.
Yep. And they're taken care of, so to speak. And so we cut back to the moon, and Hunter and Omega convinces Hunter to allow her to go with him on the search for the capacitor. They're kind of ambushed.
Just a quick attack. By the dragon.
Yeah, he leaves the capacitor kind of out. Quick attacks Hunter, Pikachu style, and knocks the mask off. So he's basically incapacitated. Omega takes his blaster, jumps down the chimney, the tube,
cave,
lava tube, cave, whatever.
Yeah.
That the dragon had climbed into to track it down. She ends up finding the dragon, distracting it with her flashlight, and grabbing the capacitor and coming back out. And
I definitely got that. I guess we'll finish the recap, but it was interesting during that scene because the creature was like angry and then kind of settled down.
I think I know where you're going with this.
We'll catch up.
We'll talk about that during the breakdown. And so she finds the capacitor. She's able to lure the dragon, I guess, away or into its corner with her flashlight, and she scurries back out. After Hunter finally comes to and realizes Omega's not there, she finishes the mission, and we come back to the ship, and there's a surprise waiting. We go back to Camino with the troopers coming back, and they realize that one's missing, and Tarkin, he seems to be on board with the clones, the elite clones training the conscripted or enlisted troops, which is what Rampart is. His Project War Mantle, I think, is what they've dubbed it, which is the sort of the phasing out, I guess, of the clones and building the stormtrooper,
Right, but
the
the
Galactic
clones,
Army,
but the clones with the
or the Imperial Army. Excuse me.
the highest level, I guess, for inhibitor ship and stuff like that. Like they're like they can be in charge.
Right, the elite ones.
Yeah.
And so so that'll be actually interesting to see how that progresses throughout the season. And then last scene, we cut back to the ship, and they celebrate Omega for effectively completing the mission. And at the beginning, during ration time, Wrecker was going to take her food, and Hunter made a comment that she didn't even have a room to sleep in. And so Wrecker took stuff from around the ship and actually created a room for Omega up in the gunner seat,
Yeah,
I
the
think.
like gunner seat, yeah.
And the rear gunner seat. And so she now has her own place. She's part of the crew.
One of the crew.
And so and it just and the episode ends with her smiling, in her space and kind of looking, I think, up out. And it cuts off. So as far as the episode goes, I would probably give it, again, probably maybe an 8. The Crosshair sort of scenes, while very dark and, I mean, dark's probably the best way to describe it. It does a lot, I think, to explain where he's at as a character, mostly actually entirely against his will, and then the I guess for all intents and purposes fetch quest of go fetch the capacitor that the monster stole. Even that, while I mean it's necessary to show that Omega is capable, as well as potentially hint at some of the other skills she might possess. So yeah, I'd probably give it an 8. What about you?
I'm right in that 8.5 range. If I was having my kid watch this with me, it'd be tough because the Crosshair scenes are really dark.
Yeah, for a children's cartoon, it's
dark. And I know this is probably meant for that 12 to 15-year-old kid, but yeah, any younger than that, I mean, you'd be explaining stuff. Like you'd really have to explain stuff. And yeah, but overall, yeah, an 8.5. That Crosshair scene was dark, and it kind of it shows you the beginning of what they're doing, which is will evolve into stormtroopers and elite squadrons or death troopers and any of those special forces.
Mm-hmm.
So and Rampart talked about the trooper and how with more training and more time and more soldiers we can make this work.
Mm-hmm.
But
Exactly.
I need more resources for it, kind
Right.
of thing. So that was good. And then yeah, I mean Omega coming through with the mission, good stuff. But yeah, like right in that 8.5. That's probably a sweet spot.
Yeah, and IMDb gives it an 8. So
Solid 8. Yeah, solid episode. Again, nothing too crazy happened. That was, I guess, unexpected. So
we did gloss over the biggest thing at the end of the episode with Lamasse and Nala Su.
oh yeah,
That was kind of important. I mean, we'll talk about that in the breakdown.
yeah,
it's not critical to.
something else is going on.
Right.
Yeah. There's some other plays here now.
I suppose it's not as critical to the overall recap,
No.
but we'll talk about it in the breakdown.
Yeah. So I guess to start with a breakdown, we glossed over this one too in the recap, but on the crash landing, Wrecker hits his head pretty good.
Mm-hmm.
And he starts like really rubbing, and we haven't seen Wrecker other than when he was shot in any kind of like instance where this is a problem. I just worry about, if it hit his head, what happens if it knocked his inhibitor chip to a position where he might respond to orders?
Because he's grabbing, he whines about it the entire episode basically, and every time he touches his head, it's right in that area where the inhibitor chip should be.
Yeah. And from what we've seen in previous clones, yes. So I'm curious to see if that turns into anything. I think that Wrecker is just, I don't know if you can make him evil. I for the show purpose. just because he's the fun one.
He's a lovable goof.
Yeah, so it'd be hard to say, yeah, let's just go ahead and flip that switch on him. It'd be different if they had to deal with like Tech as a bad guy for a minute before.
With the evil genius.
Yes,
That would be a good one. Well, and I think if it is something with his inhibitor chip, that he'll be the first one that Tech uses his new gadget on, to try and, one, see what's going on, and then two, maybe there's some way to control it with it. I'm not sure, but yeah, for a guy who got shot with a blaster bolt, he sure was complaining about his head hurting a lot more than when he got shot. So it's probably a decent guess to assume it's the inhibitor chip.
Yep. Yeah, that's just my thought on that. I guess the next part of it would be skipping ahead to that shadow dragon, the moon dragon.
The Ordo moon dragon.
Thank you. I don't know. What are your thoughts on Omega and how she dealt with that?
It reminded, I think this is maybe where your thought was. So there's a couple, right? So it's either the Beastmaster skill that a Jedi possesses, both that Anakin displayed in the Geonosian arena with the Reek, right?
Yeah.
Was the triceratopsy looking bull thing, and then also Rey with the sand snake thing, that she had to steal had to get the Sith dagger back from.
Yeah.
Both, possessing that ability to calm a beast without really, I mean, Anakin did the whole hand out thing, but it's almost like an innate skill, and it's actually one that you learn for video game fans, Knights of the Old Republic. You can actually teach yourself that skill.
Yep.
In the Jedi tree. So,
and Ezra showed off that skill a lot in Rebels also.
Yep.
Like, he would physically control animals for him and his friends to escape on or anything else. So we've seen that skill many, many times. And the way she calmed him, the dragon, if she did, it's potentially like, because she shined the light in his face, he'd scream.
He freaked out.
He freaked out. And then she turned it off for a second and then turned it back on, and he didn't freak out. And then she threw it off to the side and let him have it, kind of thing, like a stick.
And then he had this cool like glow stick effect when he was munching on it.
So it's just everything's just kind of leading more and more for my theory of Omega is potentially force sensitive. And so good stuff there. Is there anything else you want to talk about on that scene? Or?
On that particular scene, no.
And then we did catch her talking to talking to Hunter about Crosshair during the episode, saying maybe there's a chance that we can help him.
Oh, yeah.
And that goes off my theory from last week was I think they're going to try to turn Crosshair back throughout the show this season, which with a scanner being made, Omega saying that during this episode, I think that's the direction they're going to eventually at least try
to go.
Yeah.
That's a good point. It's that he didn't want to leave him behind, and she's like, well, let's
get him back.
Let's go get him. So, I'll be really curious, especially with how he acted in this. It was a weird juxtaposition, because they're like, hey, let's go rescue him. And then he's executing civilians,
actively just killing people.
Right.
Yeah.
And so that's going to be a long pullback. Or maybe it's as simple as just turning down the volume on his inhibitor chip.
Yeah.
I guess we'll see.
And we did skip over something with Crosshair while we're on his topic is we brought up during the recap that they came upon his gear on the ship. Well, at the end of the episode, when the Elite Squad gets back, they go into Clone 99's barracks, and Crosshair is back in his bunk, but he walks back in. You see the stuff, the markings for the tally marks on the wall for the missions completed. He's looking around. I think there's a piece of him that is remorseful.
Oh, he's sad. I think he's sad.
But like he's doing what good soldiers do. So, and
And the room was clean. The
And
barrack,
oh yeah, well,
the barrack was
Yeah.
bright and shiny clean.
yeah. So that was an interesting how they came upon his gear early in the episode, then they closed out with him getting back to where they would have been.
Well, and it was interesting too in that scene back in the barracks because each person has, or seemed to have, at least on the one side that they showed, have something etched or painted on the wall of their bunk. I think there was a skull, and I think there was another one on the back bunk. But then Crosshair's bunk is just, it's bare. It's very, again, very matter of fact. It's where he sleeps, and that's it. He doesn't, And again, I think it goes kind of back to his personality of being very straight laced, kind of cynical, that sort of stuff. Like he sees his job as being a soldier and nothing more.
Yep. And then that takes us to, I guess, the final scene when we
The big scene. I mean, like that's, I think, the most theory worthy scene of certainly of the episode, perhaps.
yeah.
Entirely,
What was
of the season so
Lamasu
far.
and Nalase talking about?
Right. So they're
Exactly.
right.
Because we know they're talking about Clone Force 99. It's very evident that they need one of them back because Django's strain is, diluting too much now.
It's a copy of a copy of a copy of a copy. You're gonna slowly degrade that source file if you look at it from a computer
So they need a
standpoint.
new host, and they want to use one of the enhanced clones. And so whether that be, we don't know which one they're gonna go for. I would think, Hunter or Tech would probably be ideal candidates, and we don't know what exactly Omega is yet.
Right.
But if I was going to build an army out of somebody, those would be because Wrecker's big and strong, but that's just it. He's big and strong. Not a whole lot of tactics there. He gets told what to do. He doesn't even memorize the hand signals for what the plans are. So, really interesting stuff there.
Well, and it all stems from the fact that Tarkin, is hell bent on getting rid of the clones as fast as possible, and the Kaminoans' job is to make clones, and so they're quickly, Lama Su is quickly seeing themselves being made redundant, and they have to figure out. They have to move. I think they even say we have to move to the next phase.
Yeah, they have to find out a way to make the Empire interested in their product.
Right, and so you've got essentially what will become, I guess, a phase 3 clone, because you had your phase 1, you had your phase 2. Like I think Rex was a phase 2 clone.
Yeah.
And then so now you're moving to the next phase, whether that's phase 3 or it's called something else. I don't know.
The other thing I'm really interested on is they said they have to go get one back. Crosshair's on facility, so they don't want him.
They don't want to use him.
That or they can't anymore.
Well, they could.
I don't see why they couldn't.
They could use his DNA. It doesn't. The inhibitor chip doesn't affect his DNA.
So yeah, there must be something. They're looking for a very specific set of skills.
Well, and that's what they say. It finishes, or one of the last things they say is, we just need one, right? And so it kind of leads into, if Omega is force sensitive, which she probably is, that it leads into the Empire's force sensitive cloning project,
Right.
Which we see in the Mandalorian,
Right.
on that outpost, which happens to be on the Outer Rim, and so
So this would be the start of that.
It would be
because that would mean that they are relevant, because the Emperor would be like, I need that, so keep them around.
Right.
Otherwise, the Kaminoan people would be probably destroyed.
For sure, and by having force sensitive beings, it would allow Palpatine down the road to basically pass himself off into new force sensitive hosts. And so again, it could be their way of setting up everything that we learned in well, learned or were introduced to in the sequel trilogy. The stuff that, again, going back to the Mandalorian, you've got the Kaminoan scientist who's experimenting on Grogu, who is force sensitive, obviously, hugely force sensitive, Baby Yoda, and then we find that outpost in the second season where they have all these clone specimens of presumably force sensitive beings, which is why they're trying to get Grogu back. And so that had to start somewhere. Grogu wasn't the first.
I like that. And just to expound on that a little bit, what if it's not one of the clones they need back? What if they need a Jedi?
Which goes to the discussion of how many altered clones were there,
Right?
And they have 5 left, but that doesn't mean that they were 5 to start with. It implies that there were certainly more than 5 at one point, and so that's a good point where we're meant to believe that it's one of the Bad Batch or Omega, who I guess is part of the Bad Batch now. That you're right, maybe it is a clone Jedi that nobody knows about,
Or just a Jedi as a host.
Or Sith,
Because they're looking for a host.
or Sith.
Yeah. Could be.
Snoke confirmed. Nailed it.
Snoke. We figured it out, guys.
But
You
that
heard it here first.
But that is the biggest what's going to happen
Scene that we've gotten so far.
And I mean, how it ties into, again, everything else we have from the Mandalorian to the sequel trilogy, because they're going to find a way to explain
Everything's
all of it.
connected. Everything is connected.
And
Thank
I know
you, Dave Filoni.
And I know that they've explored some of the topics in the novels and stuff like that. Unfortunately, I think many of the novels aren't considered canon for one reason or another, and so whether those explanations are accepted, I'm gonna use air quotes there, remains to be seen. But we know everything in these shows, in these upcoming movies, everything that is made by Disney is considered canon. And not that canon versus non-canon is important, because it's all Star Wars and we can love it all. But if you're trying to connect the dots of a consistent story, this is probably the building blocks of that arc, of that cloning arc for force sensitive beings.
Yep. Yeah. So that's good.
And I did see, just to finish that up, I've seen it online here over the last couple of days of the tie-in to Starkiller from the Force Unleashed games and stuff like that, with him being a clone. So I don't know that, in my opinion, I don't know that they would make him it'd be him.
I did love those games.
They were a blast.
Non-canon, but
who didn't love to just pick up a stormtrooper and throw him off the scaffolding?
Yeah,
it's the same thing you could kind of do in Jedi Fallen Order,
right?
Which was a lot of fun.
It was also a lot of fun.
Force stopping rocket and then force pushing it back, and
here, eat that. No, you take that one. I don't want it. Thank you.
Exactly. So episode 3, I think, again, ends setting us up for a lot of good stuff, not just with the cloning, with the Kaminoans, but also with that transition from clone trooper, as the primary soldier to, they eventually are all phased out, but bringing in more enlisted soldiers, and then training them or having them trained. I'd be curious to see if they pull in additional clones as elite squad commanders.
I'm sure that's got to be their plan, because they'll be 100% loyal at all times.
Rex would be a good one to do.
Wouldn't that be interesting?
If they turned Rex into an elite squad commander, and he's the one who ends up tricking Crosshair and helping the Bad Batch capture Crosshair.
Yeah, that'd be funny.
That'd be fun.
That'd be good. I mean, that's you never know.
Right.
I'm sure we're gonna. We already know we're gonna see him. He was in the trailers, so Rex is coming at some point, and we'll see when he decides to join up and help him out, and what kind of mission they're gonna be on. Yeah, I mean, good stuff. I mean, theory still stands for me as far as Omega being force sensitive, Crosshair being turned back over, and now we are thinking that if they are after the Bad Batch, now we have multiple parties interested in finding and capturing, or at least bringing them back to Camino. Crosshair would probably be destroying them, but
Oh yeah.
Lama Say and
Lamassu and
Lamassu
Nalase.
and Nalase would be interested in at least getting them back, at least one. So they have to figure it
And
out.
the question is, do they need to be warm or cold? To put it.
I'm thinking they're gonna need a lot of blood.
Probably.
So
Yeah.
Probably,
Oh, that's a good point.
Probably warm.
That's probably true.
Got to study the blood.
Right. A good point. That is a good point.
So, but yeah.
Yeah, I was gonna say that wraps up our episode 3 breakdown.
Yeah. Not a lot of new news this week as far as the Star Wars content goes. We just got through May the 4th, so we're a week and a half out of that. So
we got the Andor kind of trailer.
Oh, we did get the
Talk
Andor
about that real quick.
teaser. That looked good.
It looks great.
Diego Luna is going to be phenomenal in it. I'm very, very excited for that show. It was just we didn't get a whole lot of scenes. It was a lot of like more interview type
more
stuff,
like a
and
behind the scenes type thing.
Yeah, like hey, we're working on this, and it looks really cool. And when you're building these worlds, and sets look great. Like the sets they were working on live action looked great.
I wonder if they'll get to use the volume at all for some of the space.
I would imagine they would.
It looked like the one shot from the trailer or the behind the scenes, I guess, is Cassian in a ship in space, and it looked a lot like the volume.
Yeah,
from,
I mean
from Mando.
after you've seen what the Mandalorian's done with that space and set space,
You can do so much.
I
with
don't
it.
know why you wouldn't throw I mean, everyone's probably on the list to use that, so because you can just do so much with it. I would expect that though, and it's probably cheaper than doing any other way at this point. So
I
just
would
digital render and
exactly, and I have a feeling they're gonna probably build a couple of those sets. Volume 1, Volume 2, Volume 3.
Yeah.
And
Omni screen volume
shot in IMAX. So, but yeah, the behind the scenes or the trailer looks good. Looks great. That show has a lot of potential to kind of give us that that grittier side of that you kind of got from Rogue One, but you get it on a more episodic basis.
Yeah, and it'll be good too because it just reminds you that both sides are at war. Rogue One definitely reminds you of that, especially when he was talking about you don't know the things I've done. Well, we're gonna find out some of them, and I bet they're not pretty. So it'll be really cool to see that aspect of the rebellion because they painted it in a really nice picture during the original trilogy, and well, it's not always that pretty.
Yeah, the rebels are seen as the quote-unquote good guys. And, I mean, the things that were done to achieve victory were, some of them were, again, just as dark as what Crosshair did to that.
Yeah, I always go back to The Mandalorian
civilians.
Season 2 when Cara Dune is talking to that Imperial pilot on that ship.
Oh, yeah.
And he's like, how many people did you lose on Alderaan or something like that? Like digging at her. And then she just said, too bad you weren't on the Death Star. Or no, he said, I was stationed on the Death Star. And she just said, which one? And then he was like, millions of people died on those starships.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm like, that's a pretty solid point. Like, I mean, in our eyes, it was evil, so it was acceptable losses.
Right.
But millions of people got killed on those.
In war, there is no good side and bad side. There's both sides do things that
are ugly.
Yeah, war is ugly in and of itself, and it's no different for Star Wars.
Yeah.
So yeah, that comes out 2022. I think is what it said. So. Yeah, we'll be looking for more actual, I guess, real trailers with scenes and stuff, but it's going to get the Mando treatment, I'm sure, with kind of that movie budget, and I don't think they're going to spare any expense with these upcoming shows, both, Andor, Kenobi.
I really do wish they would do multiple seasons of that too, but I don't know if they're going to.
I don't.
I know they're slated for 12 episodes now. I think that might be it.
Is it 12?
Yeah.
Okay, because I think last I saw was 8, so that's nice. At least they're giving us 4 extras.
Yeah, and it's possible that that's still going to change. I mean, it's still very early.
Yeah, I fingers crossed for
I'm hoping we get multiple
season
seasons.
Kenobi.
It does say season 1, and it's open-ended 2022 through. There's no like
for Kenobi or Andor.
Andor.
Okay, so Andor's 12 episodes.
12 episodes, yeah.
Okay.
Kenobi, yeah, that was.
I think Kenobi's 8.
Sorry about that, yeah.
So we're just mixing and matching there, but I think Kenobi is a limited run, though I wish we'd get more. So if we're only going to get 8 episodes or whatever, I'm hoping that they're maybe an hour long, a la like a Game of Thrones episode or something like that. So, yeah.
I think there's only 6 on there right now.
Oh, that's going to suck if it's only 6.
Yeah, it's a just TV miniseries. Yeah, because it's just Obi-Wan Kenobi, right? That's the name of it.
I thought it was just called Kenobi, but yeah. I mean, if it's got Ewan McGregor in it, then it's the right show.
Yeah, it's so confusing because there's a freaking there's a Kenobi, a Star Wars story, but it was like a fan film.
Oh yeah,
from
that's actually
2019.
Really,
pretty solid.
And it had James Arnold Taylor playing. If it's the same one, it has James Arnold Taylor as the Imperial officer who's fighting, the Obi-Wan Kenobi in the fan film. And again, for those of you who don't know, James Arnold Taylor played or voiced Obi-Wan in the Clone Wars.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, but that show looks Obi-Wan Kenobi looks great. You've got. First of all, Deborah Chow is the director for it, which she did a phenomenal job with her Mandalorian episodes, so I can't wait to see what she brings to Obi-Wan. But they've already announced so many cast members, like Hayden Christensen is Darth Vader in the show, so we'll get to see him. It'll be great.
And I have a theory on whenever we get to kind of our pre-show episode on Kenobi, I have a theory.
Yes.
On that links Kenobi and Vader. So.
Yeah, but we can't wait till. I mean, we've got all kinds of great shows between Visions and Rangers of the New Republic, Ahsoka coming up. Like, yeah,
I'm really excited to see Acolyte. Of the shows that were announced, a few months back, I think Acolyte is going to be one that I'm looking forward to most, just because we don't get a Sith side of
any story
of anything.
Yeah, and
so to give us kind of a background in visual form, obviously it's been explored in print.
Yeah,
to a huge extent. It'll be fun to get that in visual form, beyond what we know of with Vader and Maul and Savage and those.
It'd be cool.
Those folks. So.
Well, and then they could go deeper, like Knights of the Republic type Acolyte. So they can go really deep with that. So we'll have to see what kind of time period we're looking at for it.
Yep.
Really good stuff. Well, I think that brings us to the end of the episode.
Yep.
We'd be crazy not to mention our flagship podcast, Galactic Dads. Those guys do a great job over there. So if you have time, they post weekly also. So go give them a listen over on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, but really anywhere you get your podcast from.
Yep, and follow them on Twitter at Galactic Dads. Pretty much every social is at Galactic Dads. So yeah, give them a follow, give them a listen. They're putting out good content weekly. So, and then for us, our next episode will cover we'll recap episodes 4 and 5.
Yeah,
unless 4 gives us a reason to do a separate one.
2 and 3 were nice just to kind of combine together. They weren't linked together, and so it gave us a shot just to do both of them with the same episode and have some separate theories. And yep, it's good stuff.
Cool.
And it wasn't 70 minutes to cover, so
that's true.
That always helps.
The 27 to 30 minute episodes are nice little morsels. It's not too much to digest. So.
All right, but until next time, thanks for listening, and
may the Force be with you.